You know, oddly enough, these Sonic movies are probably the kind of films that I have been most enjoying as of recent years, and it's probably because I don't quite put it on the same status of heights that I expect certain animated movies to be. This trilogy very much likes to go into just being big old love letters to fans with way too many references, and I absolutely lap it all up. And though I found the original Sonic movie to be kind of bland and kind of safe, the second movie did a whole lot better with far too many references, and the third one now adapting this Sonic Adventure 2-esque storyline, I was genuinely really hyped for this movie. It seemed that in all corners, Sega and Paramount finally worked out what exactly it is that Sonic fans were hoping for, and were just going ham on showing everything. And to be honest, there is so much from this movie I would love to just gush about. The whole initial sequence we see with Shadow is just immaculate. The way they use his abilities and translate it on the film, his whole sequence with the electric gun and driving a motorcycle all the way up a tower, all sorts of references to Chow Garden. Chow's in space in a poster. Is something going to happen on the 23rd of June? I wouldn't be surprised. Integrating the humans in a way that's not so invasive, since we're here for the anthropomorphic furry things, and doing it in a way that works pretty succinctly. And though it's different, adding all sorts of variations like a second Robotnik by making a full character out of the grandfather Robotnik is, I wouldn't say inspired, but it's very, very good. There is so many references that I noticed and I enjoyed and was constantly leaning over to mention what references what as it went along, as it was clear that this was just one big love letter against all of the odds. And considering how complex and how many characters there actually are in the initial Sonic Adventure 2 storyline, it was quite well done in how they were able to warp it into a slightly simpler version with the changes they did make. No longer do we need Rouge as well there, or Big the Cat running around in the background. They skipped the likes of the pyramids and the rocket that get people up to space in the first place, and instead just set it entirely in London for some reason. Why London? Is it a British evil thing? I don't entirely understand. There is no space colony arc this time. There's no giant walnut in the sky. It's just a crab robot thing. And Shadow's backstory had been changed in a way to make it a little bit more PG, a little bit more palatable, which is fine. No longer is Maria being shot directly by a human intentionally. They are being shot accidentally in an explosion caused by someone trying to save her from a bullet to the head. Okay, sure, fine. And there were other elements that they changed that I thought, alright, makes sense. We don't need the giant lizard final boss, I guess, really. Let's make him into a 1950s Godzilla reference instead. Alrighty then. And though the grandfather Robotnik was not nearly as Jim Carrey-like as he is in this movie, I could actually sit down and kind of just switch my brain off and enjoy it for what it was most of the time. The laser sequence, I liked. I took a good bit of shutting my brain off. It was a weird blend of being a pop culture moment, but with a really old song, so it was simultaneously out of date and pop culture-y. Maybe that's what I want. A music choice that's not because of trends or any of it. Though, thinking about it, there were a couple of genuinely outdated lines, like they still made a joke about autocorrect in this movie somehow. And that's because, yes, this movie was never going to reach the full expectations considering how much hype was leaning behind it, and they made some intentional adaptations along the way to make things fit. However, for a brief moment in time, while I was enthralled pretty much the whole way through, I didn't feel like my expectations were exceeded beyond in any level. They didn't integrate the likes of Amy and Rouge in the background that wasn't revealed in the trailer or something like I was kind of expecting. I was kind of hoping there'd be like an extra layer to be like, wow, they really thought this together. Just introducing Shadow and Maria will do for a new movie, and I guess a second Jim Carrey, sure. Don't need to overexpand it. But there was a moment when this movie lost me, because at the end of the day, this is still a Paramount production, and even recently for the Sonic IP, they kind of flubbed it with the Knuckles series. This is very much still aimed for an extra young audience, which is surprising, considering this is very clearly quite a dark story. Even still, for the most part, it did pretty well in making things PG, and there is way more from this movie that I like than I don't like. But there was one tiny piece towards the end of the movie that made me go, Maybe after saying so much that the people making the Sonic movie really understand Sonic fans and know what we're after, doesn't fully understand and have just lucked out towards this point. It was a brief moment, really. It was, of course, what do you know, in the final battle of the movie. Sonic and Shadow are facing off against each other in Super Sonic and Super Shadow form. Brilliant, absolutely adored that sequence, and also really leaning heavily on Sonic having an evil moment, which is an interesting direction for sure, the friendship and all that. It's a good PG version of the messaging, I guess. All the while, the two Robotniks are also beginning to fight against each other because it turns out grandfather Robotnik wants to shoot the Earth and kill everybody, and Robotnik doesn't want that because he's not that much of a madman. Sure, alright, well, I'll take it, whatever he says. But in going against his grandfather, this new warped Paramount version of him, the first sort of red flag, it's not the end of the world, change is the way these two Eggman fight against each other. This Eggman adaptation through the whole movies has always been a little bit extra quirky. He's more Jim Carrey being given a task than he is Eggman because they decide to turn them both into bug people. They have mantis arms and scorpion tails and bug wings, which I didn't necessarily think fit his character. I guess he is kind of a bug with the way he makes all these robot machines. It was very much what a strange direction they decided to take for a fight between the two of them. It's not exactly gigantic robot legs, I guess, and it never would be. That's quite a, shooty kind of weapon. But even still, that's not even the main thing. For me, what it was how they ended this fight scene, because at the same time this is going on, pretty much all of the characters are scattered for different reasons. Sonic and Shadow are fighting across the Earth in super form, and they have what is admittedly a lovely moment of sitting on the moon quietly beneath the stars in a way that reflects Shadow's backstory scene with Maria under the stars. That's really lovely, and he goes and turns from bad to good in having that conversation based off of some of the thematical lines and messagings of the movie. Great, brilliant, cool. So Shadow changes sides. Okay, we'll keep a note of that. Meanwhile, Sonic has come out to this fight out of anger and revenge, abandoning his friends and his friendship to fight out of spite, much like Shadow did 50 years ago. He's got his own character arc to deal with, being different from Shadow. So at this time, Knuckles and Tails have just been left behind on Earth, knowing that Sonic has run away from them and has presumably gone to the Master Emerald to become Super Sonic and fight. How do they get involved in this final climax, you may ask? Well, they just sort of teleport in at the last minute. Our Robotnik is kicked out of the spaceship itself by the grandfather Robotnik, in a way that kind of reminds me of the opening of Sonic Unleashed. Don't know if it's intentional, but I certainly enjoy it. Oh, that'd be a great movie to adaptate. Anyway, another time. And then while he is flung out to space and you think he's dead, turns out Knuckles and Tails save him with a teleporting ring. Several questions. It's just a Deus Ex Machina, really. How did they know he was there? How did they get a ring there? Why are they helping him in this moment? Did he know that they changed sides? It just kind of comes out of nowhere. Fine. What's especially worse, it's the thing that honestly shook me back to this, critical lens of mine, is our Robotnik just goes out of his way. He whips out a supersonic quill that he had from his pocket, and he shoves it up of his own grandfather's arse with a farting sound effect that propels him into the sky and zaps him away like a bug trap. Immediately, quickly, he's killed with a fart joke. Now, I know this is Paramount, and I know they have an especially kidly audience they're gunning for, and every one of these movies has a fart joke in there somewhere, but to make the fart joke the final punch of the final bit of the trilogy movie that you've made is just a bit too far for me. It really ruins the tone, but especially, it's just a zip and it's done. The death, even without the fart sound effect in there, is just a little bit nothing. I guess it's because they don't really want to show a death. It's really lame, to be honest, after adapting this really good, eclectic and slightly dark story with a fan base that are absolutely rabid for all the references you are putting in there, to then just actually sit down and make us watch a fart joke for the ending is a bit... oh boy. But that's just me having a personal gripe, if anything. It gets further worse from there because, hey there, they can make it to the halfway mark of this video. Come along and subscribe if you haven't already to hear about new animated movie reviews of ours. Alrighty, back to the second half of our review of Sonic 3. It gets further worse from there because, hey, now we know our Eggman Robotnik is good. Knuckles and Tails suddenly knew. That's cool. Alright. The next thing that happens is the actual Space Colony arc, that's not called the Space Colony arc, it's just a machine this time, is still going to fire aimed at Earth. Cool, I like it as a final sequence moment, considering in the games the version of events is there is a rehearsal shot towards the moon and then there's going to be a shot at Earth. I was kind of not expecting it to go this way. Maybe that's a little bit on me, maybe it's a little bit underwhelming. Instead, what it is the gun's going to fire for the first time directly at Earth and everyone has to direct it off of Earth. Okay, sure, you'll never guess where it goes. The final solution beyond the fart joke quill is that Eggman ends up pissing on the moon. Now, I didn't really expect a Snapcube reference to be in there. At most, they could have said, "I've come to make an announcement." But by this point, I had kind of lost the magic moment in that moment because this was spoiled in the trailer. This became a big moment online because they're actually adapting that scene, and this is just a problem with the Paramount marketing team, honestly. They have such a kiddly approach that the trailer shows so much of the movie more than you realize. Like, the fact that the second trailer is all heaped up in the race of all the Sonic characters, that's the ending. That's, like, basically the epilogue of the movie. Why is it in the trailer like that? So then, you're like, oh, well, now that I know that there's the pissing on the moon-esque moment, I guess that's the final solution. We'll skip to the end when we get to that. That's not a surprise. It's one of the most iconic Sonic moments of the entire saga, in a sense. After that point, you then have Shadow teleporting into the room where he then goes, oh, hey, Robotnik, what do we need to do now? But this is another problem I have. Every character seems to instantly know everything the audience knows. At this point, why do either of these characters really react as if either of them are on the same side? Robotnik shouldn't know that Shadow has changed his mind, and Shadow should think that Robotnik's still on the side of the Robotnik that just tried to shoot the Earth, Instead, it just kind of becomes a happy-go-lucky, hey, we're all on the same side now because the audience knows it. It's a kind of dumbing down right at the end that I just think docks it points, honestly. I'm not exactly saying this was always going to be a 10 out of 10 or even a 9 out of 10, but there is a notable dock in my mind for just making it a little bit too unthought out at the very last second. It's a gripe that's going to hold this movie down in my head because why did they do it like that suddenly at the end, It was going so perfectly throughout all the rest of it. Even though there was a lot of references that he didn't include, which is kind of weird. Like, why is it based in London again when we had so much of like a global experience in the original story, San Francisco, the pyramids in Egypt and the like. Well, how's about the fact I don't even think there was a real song reference to City Escape. There was the kind of forced in line of No Flight or Movies on the Plane, I guess, and all sorts of references in other places. Shadow, I don't even think says Chaos Control in this movie. They make a joke that he's like, how you've got a catchphrase? You do, you could make a quip saying, hey, did you not realize you do too? But no, it's more like they were more interested in saying a quip about he doesn't do catchphrases because he's too dark than to do the catchphrase, which kind of, I don't know, would have been cool. But hey, at least the Chow Garden's in there. Maybe one day they make a game out of it and actually print some money that they could do. It's the kind of thing where I feel like maybe Paramount didn't know exactly what the fans wanted because they've made some weird flubbings in not including the most popular song in the soundtrack and one of the most quoted lines from Shadow, their most popular character. Or maybe I missed it. I mean, that's valid too. I've only seen it once in cinemas. And even then, I had a crying child next to me the entire time. That mother just refused to not see what was going on in the supersonic fight scene, I guess. Now, while I have this gripe at like the middle of the final act moment, admittedly, it does then knot it back up again. It was interesting to see how they actually adapted the end of the Shadow story. Because it's kind of a surprise to remember, but in the original game, Shadow does die at the end of it. It's just Sega and Sonic team learning, hey, we should really kind of bring this guy back to make all the more money out of how popular he is, that he is back in the future. So to turn it into Sonic goes through the same falling to the earth sequence that Shadow has in the game, but he's saved by his friends, is really, really cool. And having Shadow and Eggman doing a final sacrifice goodbye on the Not Ark and exploding it away, again, a very, very cool transition and adaptation of that story. Lizard not needed, apparently. And having Eggman do the I've come to make an announcement screen, but not because he's going to kill everybody, but instead he's going to save everybody, is a really beautiful, inspired choice. Presumably because Jim Carrey doesn't want to show up for a fourth movie as well. I thought in actually tying up that knot and finishing on those ends instead, oh yeah, that's a good way to end your story. Far less than a supersonic fart quill, if I may have that opinion. Although, if I was to say any critique about the real ending, God, they kind of cut to the end, don't they? Sonic Team blast onto the planet, Stone kind of just turns away slowly and it fades off, and then we're like immediately on a very quick post-credit scene. It's like, all right, we made it to the end, but we're running out of time, go, finish, and they're done. And then it's like, oh, here's the race from the trailer you've already seen, call it quits. Fine, yeah, sure, a bit quick for my liking, but I wouldn't say that it ruined the movie. I wouldn't say this was a bad movie. I thoroughly enjoyed myself through 90% of this runtime, but it stumbled a little bit. It flubbed a little bit of the landing in a way that it's gonna be a gripe I'll always remember. There's a moment where you think Tom's meant to be dead, and then they kind of fake out that he's dead, but it happened so quickly in the epilogue, immediately after Eggman exploded, I didn't even notice they were building up to that fake out. Also, even on that front, how does Shadow know that it was the general that accidentally caused the explosion that shot Maria and punches him extra hard because of it? His back was turned in the flashback. Like, how does everyone know what everyone did when they weren't even there? It's kind of a problem throughout this whole thing. A mild one, to be honest. I'm just a loud, shouty guy under a duvet right now. But, Sonic 4. Now this could line up to be some real high-quality stuff. I was actually wondering what they were going to do with the future of Sonic, because I was thinking they weren't going to kill Shadow. He is clearly going to be the cash cow for the game, so why not the cash cow for the movies as well? No, he's dead now. And so is actually Jim Carrey Eggman? Crazy of a decision to do, but I absolutely adore it. It turns out in the post-credit scene, they are legitimately going to adapt a story with Metal Sonic. What? That's crazy. I didn't think that was possible. I didn't think that was true. That guy's before my time. That's crazy that they actually heard the fans in that regard absolutely perfectly, and they've got so many opportunities to do it in new, interesting spins. Of course, they adapted Amy Rose in there as well. Is that really a surprise? No, but I love the way they did include her, and I think could work really well with a new, original villain story with Metal Sonic. Far more than Eggman. Brilliant. It's not exactly going to be Silver the Hedgehog, and they can still expand with more sequel bait, like doing a future movie with Rouge. I really thought she was going to be in this movie, like as a secondary fluffy character, so guess long live the Sonic franchise, it can keep going from here. The fact that it is such a dark story being adapted, and it is Paramount going extra PG, Sonic is a child now, Tom is his father, there has to be fart jokes, and it's a little extra kiddly in a certain few areas and ways. It was always going to be not exactly the adolescent Sonic demographic that I was hoping it would be with an IP like Sonic, and throughout this movie, it did a damn good job of keeping me hooked and showing me references every now and again. Eggman's ringtone is the Eggman theme in Sonic Adventure 2, and then right afterwards, the big orchestra is the modern Eggman theme. I love that kind of stuff. A lot of the adaptations make some sense in a way that's not absolutely egregious. I can get along with it, and though I've got this little stumbling of a gripe in the middle ending, this is still an absolutely fantastic movie if you're a fan of Sonic. It is still a love letter nonetheless. Who needs I've come to make an announcement or anything more than that? And certainly against the likes of Disney's latest live-action soulless remake, this is the far superior project that I hope makes more money. I guess we'll see, but that's at least my reactionary thoughts and reviews on Paramount's latest Sonic 3. Long live Sonic 4. And to be honest, I was half expecting it to end at the trilogy. What a relief, I guess it isn't. For now, though, my name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this review. Do tell me your thoughts on Sonic 3. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Each is valid. It's only opinions. And I shall see you all in a little bit.